Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Brannigan. I'm the artistic director of the Denver Brass, and along with my husband Chuck, who's sitting in the back corner, we're the founders of the Denver Brass. And just to give you a little bit of background, the Denver Brass is comprised of fully professionally trained musicians. All of our musicians make a living solely through music. A lot of them are on area university faculties. I've taught at the University of Denver for, I think, 30 years now, maybe 32. I'm a classically trained musician, and as far as I'm concerned, music is what makes the world go round, and that's all I've known my whole life until fairly recently. My husband's crazy about music, and played tuba, which is what encouraged me to introduce myself to him. I only date brass players. Chuck is a scientist, a vascular surgeon, critical care medicine, thoracic surgeon. He's an overachiever. He's also a historian. He's written several books on architects of Denver. When I met him, all I heard about from Chuck was we had to go jeeping and explore all the rural roads of Colorado because you could see where the train tracks were in the mountains. And of course, the most important ones were narrow gauge railroads. So, the Denver Brass is celebrating its 42 years. Chuck and I were just babies when we started it. It's grown tremendously over the years. We perform between 130 and 150 concerts annually. We're heard by more than 35,000 people annually throughout Colorado, and we also do a number of tours. Not so much anymore because of videos and live streaming. We don't find that we have to travel around the world, but we've been to Europe and Russia, Japan, Central and South America, and I've toured throughout Colorado, which is key to my presentation today. As a musician, my life is transporting people to better places through music. I know that music heals. I know that music inspires. I just have gobs of letters of testimonial to that fact. And so I've always been on a mission to change lives and make the world a better place through music. And of course, music reveals the culture that's all around us. And that's a really exciting thing, particularly if you're in Colorado and your culture keeps evolving and changing. So because the Denver Brass really focuses on transporting people through music, it was a natural fit for the Denver Brass to want to be at our Railroad Day in Como, Colorado. And so we, several years ago, sought the help of the South Park National Heritage Area to support us in giving concerts. And of course, we come all dressed in our historic regalia. We've got photos of the original Como Town Band, so we try to emulate their look, and I think we do a pretty good job of it. We also bring along our close friends, Celtic Colorado Pipes and Drums, because of course immigrants were really important to the history of Colorado, and we know that there were a lot of people from the Emerald Isles who settled throughout the mountains. Well, none of this would have happened if I hadn't met Chuck, and of course I told you I was bold. I heard there was this really strange, obsessed scientist and doctor who was totally too strange for me to introduce myself to. And the more I heard about him, the more I thought, I've got to meet this guy. So I walked into his office late one night and said, "Hi, I'm Kathy, and I play the tuba." And just a few months later, we started dating, and life has been incredible ever since. We've just had the most fantastic adventures, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the whole wide world. Shortly after Chuck and I got married, I'd say within a couple months, we found this rundown house in downtown Denver 2 blocks from the emergency room door of Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital. And Chuck said, Kathy, you can go looking at houses as much as you want, but I've got to be close to the hospital. So this house was painted dark purple when we found it, and it was raw lath and plaster, and the one room that was finished was painted flat black with psychedelic stripes around the ceiling, and we had quite an adventure rehabbing it. We started by saying we're on the 15-year plan, but it's turned out to be the 40-year plan, and we're just like wrapping up the last room now. And we've done all the work ourselves. We've enslaved our children to helping us. We have 4 sons. And this is me in the entry room when I had brown hair a long time ago. Stenciling back on the original wallpaper pattern that we found when we painted some primer on a plaster wall. And the next morning I came down the main staircase and I saw fleur-de-lis in the shadows of the primer paint. Not too long after buying our house and moving in, we were the only home on the block almost that wasn't dealing drugs. So in self-defense, the 2 houses next door to us came on the market within a couple years of one another, and we bought them at a really reasonable price. And they're by Henry Dozier, so my husband's written a book on the architect Henry Dozier. And while he was doing all of that research, he also got our block designated a National Historic District, which has really protected our way of life, because within a couple years after purchasing these 2 houses, St. Joseph's Hospital, Kaiser Permanente, Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital all decided they should expand, and Kaiser Permanente bought the 3 blocks south of our house. And now that's all hospital area. But then Chuck was inspired to found the Hospital District Urban Design Forum, which is an organization that made sure that with all of this expansion, the hospitals melded really nicely into the neighborhood, and we've got really nice green spaces. This is the historic Gebhard Mansion on the corner of Downing and 23rd Avenue. Chuck's medical practice was expanding pretty quickly, and he needed more room. And this house had been abandoned, and we went off on a search to figure out who owned it. We found the man living in Illinois, and I called him and said, we'd love to buy your building. And he said, well, I'll let you know. And a few months later, I got a phone call, and he said, hi, Kathy, this is Arthur Smith. I'm in Denver. If you want to buy my building, you better come see me right now. So I drove to the address he gave me and found him in serious cardiac distress. So I put him in my car and drove him to my husband's medical office. And Chuck realized that he had put a pacemaker in Arthur Smith several years earlier. So a nice friendship developed, and we bought this home from Arthur Smith. We're just the 3rd owners of the Gebhard Mansion, which is an 1880 building. I might be off by a year or 2, but it's got that beautiful mansard roof. Chuck wrote an article for Medical Economics about how difficult it is to work with some cities if you're rehabbing old buildings. But we had a good time doing it. I told you that Kaiser Permanente gobbled up the block south of our house, and in that block was the Matthew McBird house, Matthew McBird being the architect. And the story was everybody in the neighborhood said, well, Paul Whiteman used to live in that house. And of course, Paul Whiteman's a famous big band leader, and that really intrigued me. It turns out he didn't really own the house, but he did have a relationship with the woman who lived in that house. And there are a lot of good stories about that lady and the tower. So we bought the house for $1 from Kaiser Permanente and moved it from Lafayette Street 2 blocks west and 3 blocks north so that it could live next door to Chuck's office. We had a parade because it was a big deal, a steam calliope, and it took 2 days, and then the contractors who were moving the house disappeared because they got in trouble with the government for not paying withholding tax, and the poor house sat on its steel beams for more than a year as we watched it crack from the top of the tower to the bottom, and we thought we were going to lose the whole thing and we'd be surrounded by bricks. But it was saved just in time. We found someone to lower it onto the foundation that we had built, and now it's really happily nestled next door to the Gebhard Mansion. We didn't just restore houses, although we bought several, because I thought there was nothing neater than restoring Victorian homes. We did a lot of jeeping in the mountains with our 4 sons. David, Hans, Nathan, and little Shay, they're all grown now, but our children all know the mountains really well, and they all love 4-wheel driving. That's one of Chuck's passions. Chuck's persona is a rural country doctor driving a really noisy Toyota Land Cruiser. He's only owned 3 cars in his entire life, and that poor Land Cruiser was just stolen a year ago, and it was recovered but totally ruined, so we no longer have it. Very sad. But as we'd go through the mountains, Chuck would say, "See that line over there?" And I'm squinting. "No, what are you talking about?" And every time he'd say that, it was, "That's an important railroad bed." So that was our total adventure, ghost towns, and then going to Como, Colorado, where Chuck would say, "And that building there is the Holy of Holies." So I've done a lot of touring. This is the Aries Brass Quintet, which is a recital quintet of the Denver Brass. And one of our tours took us to Creede, Colorado, and Lake City, 2 really charming towns. And on the way back, I said to my friends, "We have to take the route that takes us past Como because you've got to see the Holy of Holies." And when we got to Como, we pulled up in front of the roundhouse, and there was a for sale sign and a phone number, which I wrote down. And I said to my friends, "I have to tell Chuck about this, but I might be sorry." And within just a couple months, we bought the Como Roundhouse. At that point in our lives, Chuck was really busy with his medical practice. I was teaching. I was working for Denver Brass full-time. I was managing all of our rental properties. So the Como Roundhouse sat pretty much still, not a lot of renovation taking place until our lives slowed down a bit. And in 2016, we founded the South Park Rail Society, and that's when everything started to explode. We're really dedicated to this site being a museum, a hands-on place, an interactive place for everybody to come and learn about railroading at the turn of the century. About a year after forming the South Park Rail Society, we heard about this engine being for sale at the Georgetown Loop, and this is Klondike Kate. She worked originally in the Yukon at the Klondike Mines, and she has a long, sort of sad history. She got abandoned for about 30 years in a field in Oklahoma, so we felt that she would be a good engine for our location at the Como Roundhouse, and we're really busy now trying to get her back up and operating. We did run her for 3 summers after we bought her. 2 summers, 3 summers. But then we discovered some problems. We blew up a cylinder on the engine, and that led to looking into the pistons, and then one thing led to another, and now her boiler is empty. So we've got a long road to hoe, but I'm going to say by the summer of 2025, she'll be running. And we've just secured a Plymouth, so next summer we'll at least have a diesel Plymouth to pull some cars around and let all of you come and ride. So this is Klondike Kate at our famous Railroad Day. And then the Denver Brass has been performing there for several summers now, and we play exclusively music from, about 1860 all the way up to 1937 when the last tracks were pulled out and trains no longer operated in Como, Colorado. And there's just gobs of fantastic literature, music that everybody recognizes, from Glenn Miller, Duke Ellington, all the John Philip Sousa marches. God Bless America was written during that time. Just really fun music, some great early jazz, and the audiences love it. Our artistic director, or our executive director, Becky, is second from the left, and she has made a wonderful historic costume for the event. I told you that we feel really strongly that music can transport you. All of our major season concerts in Denver are themed, and we do it fully with costumes. So if it's Night of the Living Brass, we've got bandages all over us, and we might do Michael Jackson's Thriller, and we try to make it a lot of fun and really relatable. So the upper left-hand corner is our Baroque concert where we've got our wigs, space concert. This is Mardi Gras down in the middle. I don't have a year 22 in review because we were just coming out of the pandemic, so I brought you the last video of the last time we had a real year of events, which was 2019, but this is pretty representative of what Denver Brass does throughout the year.